Imagine if the governor of a state went onto a stage and said, hey guys, I want to talk to you guys about fifth generational warfare, and I want to talk to you guys about some of these asymmetrical warfare tactics that can be used in certain situations, just so that everyone's aware of what's going on. They've used these all over the world. Our intelligence agencies have used them to overthrow governments. These are known tactics that are written down in books, and you can find them online. I want to familiarize my public and my people with this information and strengthen all of my constituents by making them smarter and by making them aware of what's possibly going on, so they can actually respond and react accordingly in an appropriate way and know what we're up against. Right. We can know the truth.
Know the truth. Yeah. Shed some light on the truth.
That's what we're doing.
Correct. You always have to
on both sides
pay attention to the information.
Yeah.
Receive it and process it.
That's it.
You gotta be very thorough with everything I find these days.
For sure. Well, that's what we're trying to do with the script too. I mean, make sure the biscuits are in the oven, the TV's on, and the front door is open.
We need that producer for real.
Yeah, no, we need somebody.
That's high speed. It's a great brainwashing process, which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. 1, 2, 3. Biscuits get charged, black blood, go wide open, guys on the plate, back smoke rising high, fire alarm screaming, attack in the kitchen, whipping heat, gotta bring it right back. TV hollering louder than the dogs on the street. Guys spitting wisdom, feel the motivational heat. Biscuits burn, crispy smoke, cloud my defeat.
What's going on, Jonathan?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Burnt Biscuit Gang Podcast.
Hi, everybody.
This is where we take a look at the political landscapes from all angles. Crispy, golden, or a bit overdone.
Yeah, burnt to a crisp. Is how we prefer.
That's how we like it. So today, guys, we're diving into the 2024 vice presidential candidates, Tim Walz and JD Vance. We're going to break down who they are, what they stand for, and why this VP race is one for the history books. So grab those biscuits and let's get into it.
So it looks like what we did here was we went to ChatGPT 4 and looked up a script. Do you have the prompts that you put in so you can read the prompts? And you pulled up a left-wing one too, right? He asked for a right-leaning podcast script going over the parameters, because you put in the parameters about the vice presidential candidates, comparisons, right?
Pros and cons list.
And then you took some of the parameters from that answer and put them in to ask for a script for the podcast, right?
Right.
Okay, perfect. Now we're all in the same página. As long as everybody speaks Spanish, we're all in the same página.
Tú sabes.
La página web.
So our question to ChatGPT was, create a 30-minute right-leaning informational podcast script in conversation form that is all about the true facts and is creative, intelligent, and unique, with talking points and facts from various articles and resources about the pros and cons and the controversies of the 2 vice presidential candidates for the 2024 elections, which is Tim Walz and JD Vance. Provide articles and resources from multiple neutral news outlets. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I came out with the intro that you just read out, and then my answer to that is, Jonathan, I'm excited about this one. These 2 candidates are a real contrast in terms of ideology and style. On one hand, we've got Tim Walz, the progressive governor from Minnesota, and on the other, JD Vance, the conservative firebrand from Ohio. 2 very different paths leading 2 very different versions of America.
And this is where I say, absolutely, LJ.
Yeah, and I think this is actually where the polarizing language starts for me, because the tone in that, and we're like, so we're not gonna read the whole script, right? Should we tell them what we're doing?
We already told them what we're doing.
So we're not gonna read the whole script. We're gonna read through the script, and then we're gonna analyze it and see what where's ChatGPT really sitting at. What's the breakdown? Is it a left-leaning mechanism? Is it a right-leaning mechanism? This is totally polarizing.
We're gonna read this out so you can take a look and make a decision about that for yourself. We're just producing the facts here.
Well, yeah, this is what we got out of it. I don't see how, on the one hand, we've got Tim Walz, the progressive governor from Minnesota, and on the other, JD Vance, the conservative firebrand from Ohio. 2 very different paths leading 2 very different visions for America. I mean, yeah, it's somewhat neutral, but the tone, it just kind of leans a little bit towards Walz being the progressive governor from Minnesota, and then the conservative firebrand.
Fire. Hell.
So you're looking at, progressive and conservative. Okay, those are adjectives, but governor versus a firebrand. Yeah, it just leans, to me, it reads a little bit in the favor of Walz. So I think it's immediately polarizing the audience. That's my read on it. What do you think, Jonathan?
From an initial look at it, it doesn't look that way so much. But I kind of feel like these are kind of words that get planted in your brain. Mm-hmm. Maybe in that just the subconscious part, that kind of might push a negative connotation towards JD Vance here.
Yeah, I think that it's gonna I mean, as we read through it, we're going to start to see, and like I've gone through and seen some other ones, but the first one that really tipped me off to when I was reading through it was down here. But that to me already sounds like they're starting off by trying to subtly sort of edge JD Vance into the danger category and put Walz into the like safe category.
Right. It's kind of like they're painting that picture for us.
Yeah. So then what's your next line over there?
And that's what makes this race so fascinating. So let's start with Tim Walz. He's been governor of Minnesota since 2019 and has a reputation for being a pragmatic leader, at least in the early years. Walz has a background as a high school teacher and a football coach, and he brought that team-oriented mindset to his political career. His big focuses have been government healthcare expansion, education, and infrastructure investment. But lately, he's really leaned into progressive issues like legalizing marijuana and protecting abortion rights.
So
Those aren't so bad.
okay, so the first thing that I saw in this was that they called him a pragmatic leader, at least in the early years. So for me, when I read pragmatic, they're trying to use a word that's not in common usage and that people might not know exactly what that word means.
Right. Like myself.
So pragmatic is much more aligned with the conservative values. Pragmatic means like something that is common sense. A pragmatist is someone who just does things in a very common sense kind of way and doesn't really try to like read into or extrapolate too much out of stuff. It's very pragmatic. It means it's very like clean and cut and dry, clean and simple. So to me, pragmatic is a word that's more, if you were just completely objective, if you were looking at conservative versus progressive, a conservative would be more pragmatic and a progressive would be more progressive. It's kind of the opposite word.
Right.
So this is almost a contradiction in terms here, where they're saying being a pragmatic leader and then that he's the progressive governor, right? So that's one thing that stood out to me at first. And then when it says his big focuses have been healthcare expansion, education, and infrastructure investment, but lately he's really leaned into progressive issues like legalizing marijuana and protecting abortion rights. Let's see. I'm sure there's far more progressive actions from Waltz Away Waltz, the guy who deserted his National Guard unit and was never in combat, despite claiming to have been in combat publicly. So it didn't say that. I said that. It wouldn't say anything like that because it doesn't want to give any sort of negative perspective on Tim Walz. But you could literally call him Waltz Away Tim Walz as a nickname because it would make sense because he deserted his National Guard unit like 2 months before they were supposed to be deployed to Iraq, and he never actually went into combat. So the other guys did, and a lot of those guys are speaking out now against him. So if you want to find proof of that, there's an X account called Stolen Valor that actually, by the name of the account, that's what they do, is they find people who've stolen valor. And they've done some dives on him, and they're still confirming his DD-214, but they're actually going to go down the administrative rabbit hole and say, hey, he did this, he did this, he did this, he didn't do this, didn't do this, didn't do this. Now, he is one of the highest NCOs ever to attain public office, I believe. He's like one of the highest ranked non-commissioned officers.
The highest
non-commissioned
officer.
So I don't know what that means necessarily. It's just that he's just a higher ranked non-commissioned officer. So he got higher up in the ranks without going to OTC. So read into that what you will. Military people, leave a comment down below in the comments and let us know what's going on with that. But when they say that, first of all, when they say pragmatic, but he's actually progressive, that to me is an alarm bell. And then when it says his big focuses have been healthcare expansion, education, and infrastructure investment, I don't have any real proof that that's been going on, but I do have lots of proof of a city on fire that he was in charge of, that he didn't do anything about except letting the criminals out who set the city on fire. There's a lot of LGBTQ rights things that he's doing that are actually damaging to children, which don't have anything to do with LGBTQ people. They have more rights than the average citizen because they are a special characteristic set of person. So they have all the rights of the normal person, and then they have extra rights on top of that, right? So they've been given what are actually privileges. The rights are the rights that are outlined in the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Those are natural God-given rights, and they have other ones above and beyond that because they are a particular intersectional characteristic group.
Right.
So they have a predetermined characteristic that puts them into a special class, so they get more protections. And what he's done is gone into schools and put women's hygiene products, tampons. and pads or whatever, into the boys' bathrooms. Not the men's bathrooms, the boys' bathrooms. So child boys under the age of 18 that he is encouraging by proxy to change their gender. So he's actually very much not pragmatic. He's very much, or you could say he's pragmatic in his attempts to subvert the population towards a particular sexual choice. But he's preaching sexuality to children in a very pragmatic way. So those are the notes that I had on that when it says, his big focuses have been healthcare expansion, education, and infrastructure investment. But he's also leaned into progressive issues like legalizing marijuana and protecting abortion rights. You could also see that as, didn't you bring up that is it Michigan's state law that he passed says that you can actually abort a fetus after.
Yeah, it was an executive order, basically, allowing abortion
after the moment of birth.
It didn't necessarily say after the moment of birth. It says there's no term limit on the abortion. The way that will come after birth is, and this would happen in any case, but if it's a failed abortion, meaning that if the woman is soon to give birth and she has an abortion, and that abortion is failed, the fetus still survives.
That's a baby. Yeah, that's
basically a life is born.
A born baby, and then they don't do anything to sustain its life.
Right, exactly.
So they just let it die. That's horrible. And he's not only in favor of that, but signed an executive order to create that law. So he's not protecting abortion rights. What he's doing is allowing people to kill infants, basically. Protecting abortion rights would be something like safe, legal, and rare. We can go ahead and do an abortion up until maybe the heartbeat is detected or whatever. That's been a long time argument about when does life actually begin. And so the argument that they're basing their decision making on is that life doesn't begin until we decide it begins, and it's obviously after the child has been born into the world. So I don't know. I mean, like Jonathan said, like decide for yourself, but those are actually the facts. Those are the facts of what's going on. And what ChatGPT has provided is just sort of an interesting conglomeration of polarizing language that it has suggested that someone make a podcast about. So it's basically like a machine that's creating and attempting to create more propaganda to propagandize people
and polarization
and polarize the population, right? Which is this again. Don't fight your neighbor. They're not your enemy. And people with left-leaning points of view, we love you guys. We want to talk to you guys. Put some comments in the comment section. Start the conversation, because we're all about having the conversation and making sure everyone is heard, and that everyone, because this is the United States of America. It's the freest country in the history of the world. Everyone has a voice.
We just want the truth and the facts.
Yeah, that's right. So my next line here, to get back to the script, is because we're going way off script. We can call this episode Off Script with Jonathan. So, right. And he's also been a strong advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. So they forgot the A and the I in there as well, and all the PEDO. What, is that in there as well?
It's ChatGPT.
Which has, I've heard that. PEDO, or ChatPedo.
4-0.
Which has made him into a hero amongst progressives. But Jonathan, let's be real here. Walz's record isn't without controversy. The way he handled the George Floyd protests in Minneapolis back in 2020 drew a lot of criticism. Some folks say he didn't do enough to maintain order, while others argue that he was too heavy-handed. I'd like to meet those people. Anyone who thinks that Tim Walz was too heavy-handed definitely needs to leave a comment.
Please leave a comment, because
we want to know exactly. I want to see the sources of where he was heavy-handed and how and why, and understand maybe what heavy-handed means. We bring a dictionary to the game. Yeah. I mean, look, it's the same thing. Some folks say he didn't do enough to maintain order. That's like the understatement of the century. And then others. And so if he didn't do enough to maintain order, I guess that would explain why half the city burned down. A lot of black-owned businesses, by the way, burned down by peaceful BLM protests. That's not to get sidetracked, but I did pull up a quote here on the screen that says the 4 communist activities are infiltrate, agitate, desecrate, and confiscate. And then the 3 communist targets are family, religion, and property. So tie that in how you will. But that's what I think about that particular line. What's your next line?
Even that line also, what it says to me is that, say, it's like he's playing both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Right? He's trying to appeal to everybody and actually, having an idea of what needs to be done and getting that job done.
Like Walz is?
Right.
Low, so that because he didn't do enough to
regarding being too heavy-handed.
And being too heavy-handed.
Right.
So he's trying to say well, I tried. I just didn't want to go too far and push past.
He's trying to appeal to both the peaceful protesters and the rioters as well.
Yeah,
playing both sides of the fence.
Right. Have we gone into the term of a useful idiot? Do we know what that term means yet, or do we need to do
Let's go over it. Just for a point of reference.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So let's see if this has it actually in here. But the useful idiot is basically one of those peaceful protesters. Those are people who are controlled through emotional reactivism, and so if they can create a victim and then find some people who are loyal to that victim or have some emotion towards that victim, and then they just use that emotion as a handle to drive them to certain actions. And so what the tactic is that the BLM/Antifa, which are like the black shirts of today, is that they'll take a bunch of useful idiots and they'll drive them up into a frenzy, and then they'll put them out in front and they'll say, this is a peaceful protest. But it's just a bunch of people who are really agitated, emotionally agitated. And then they'll be in the back, or they'll be dressed as one of the peaceful protesters, and they'll take a water bottle that's been in the freezer for 26 hours and they'll chunk that at a cop, and they'll say, oh, it was just a water bottle, right? But it's actually what they actually used to do. What supposedly that Andy Ngo was hospitalized and concussed and had some brain trauma in that particular event, where they hit him with milkshakes. But what they'll do is actually they'll put concrete paste in a milkshake. Cup,
sure.
And then they'll throw a bunch of milkshakes at somebody, and then one of those milkshakes will be a concrete block.
Wow.
So it'll look like they've got milkshakes all over them, and then there'll be milkshakes sitting around all over the place, and they'll go, and they'll instruct people like, okay, if you're at a protest and you see a cup that's a concrete cup, take it and hide it and dispose of it. So the evidence isn't there, right? So these are the type of tactics that they use on a regular basis. And they're known tactics. And that's just one example of many. But that's the type of thing that they'll do. And the useful idiot ties into that because a peaceful protester is a typical example of a useful idiot. It's one type of useful idiot that you just put out there as a group of people
to kind of mask.
So you take an action, like something that happened that was bad, which the George Floyd situation was a bad situation.
Of course.
It's an unfortunate situation. So you take someone, you put the camera angle at a perspective that makes it look like this person is solely at fault, and then this person is an angel, which they got pictures of George Floyd as like an angel, who's like an angel, I guess.
Murals and statues. The
angel who sells crack and robs pregnant women. That's that kind of angel, I guess. But they've got the perspective, and then those people don't have any idea about that. So they'll go, I'm going to protest, this injustice. And so you get them all riled up about the injustice, and then you go back and you protect yourself with a shield of useful idiots. So you're a peaceful protest. And so that's where just what I just explained right there. Imagine if the governor of a state went onto a stage at a lectern and said, hey guys, I want to talk to you guys about 5th generational warfare, and I want to talk to you guys about some of these asymmetrical warfare tactics that can be used in certain situations, just so that everyone's aware of what's going on. They've used these all over the world. Our intelligence agencies have used them to overthrow governments. These are known tactics that are written down in books, and you can find them online. This is not an unknown or a strange thing at all. I want to familiarize my public and my people with this information and strengthen all of my constituents by making them smarter and by making them aware of what's possibly going on, so they can actually watch, and then they can actually be able to, don't take the law into your own hands, don't do anything rash, but you can actually respond and react accordingly in an appropriate way and know what we're up against, right?
Right.
You know the truth.
Know the truth.
Yeah.
Shed some light on the truth.
That's what we're doing.
Let me ask you a question. So regarding useful idiots, you don't necessarily... It's not necessarily like the protesters or anything of that nature. What about when the Black Lives Matter thing happened and everyone on social media is putting up their black squares?
Right. So you sort of become a useful idiot.
That's being a useful idiot in a way.
Yeah, it is. That's just a psyop in order to be able to pull people to that side. But when you this is a Huberman answer, actually. So Andrew Huberman would be able to give us a good answer in the neurochemistry of what's going on. But when you click that button that puts the black square up there and you align yourself with that protest that you view to be as a good thing, you're creating probably like a dopamine release in your system. And so
you think you're doing some good.
So you think you're doing some good. So you're aligning yourself with good. And then when that happens, you affiliate yourself with the organization, and whatever else the organization might stand for, you don't know, that you're ignorant to, because you're right. You haven't looked into it. You're spreading and strengthening the base and the foundation of that organization. You might even donate money to them thinking that you're doing a good thing. And in your perspective, you're trying to do a good thing. You're trying to help a person that's, gone through a difficult situation.
Sure.
So there's nothing to be wrong with that. I've been a useful idiot. Everyone out there has probably been a useful idiot sometime, fallen into a psyop, fallen for a psyop, and been part of it. But that doesn't mean a negative thing about the person. All you have to do is just continue to educate yourself and grow yourself into a higher state of situational awareness, so that you can be aware of the situation that's going on around us.
Right. And that's why we're sharing these things with the audience, with the listeners, with everybody in the audience, like we have.
And it's definitely not, we don't want anyone to have any kind of reaction of fear or like dread, like, oh my God, there's a communist takeover of the country or anything like that. That is the furthest thing that we want from what's actually going to happen. What we want is to shed light on the truth so people can actually assess what's going on in the room, right? With some actual sort of balanced perspective, and not just what ChatGPT tells you or what the Atlantic tells you, or what else did they give you, like NPR?
What Google is going to tell you, what social media is going to tell you.
Correct.
You always have to,
on both sides,
pay attention to the information,
receive
it, and process it.
That's it.
You have to be very thorough with everything I found these days.
For sure. That's what we're trying to do with the script too. I mean, like,
we're not trying to be useful idiots here.
Yeah, definitely not that.
We're just trying to be truthful.
Yeah, truthful idiots. We're being truthful idiots.
So where are we on this? Is it my turn?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
That's a fair point, LJ. It's this and stuff like that. So, but we're being truthful here on.
So start again from that.
And so next up, that's a fair point, LJ. It's a balancing act for any governor during a crisis like that. Walz trying to walk the line between supporting peaceful protests and clamping down on the violence and looting that erupted. Critics on both sides weren't satisfied, and it's not just the protests. His push for progressive policies like expanding gender-affirming care and removing state abortion restrictions have made him a polarizing figure, especially in more conservative parts of Minnesota.
Polarizing.
There's that word again.
Polarizing. Tampon Tim is being polarizing. Let's not call him Tampon Tim because it's kind of a crude thing, but I wrote that down just as a note because it's a shorthand for what he actually did. Because when it says his push for progressive policies like expanding gender-affirming care, first of all, gender-affirming care is a very, very charged statement. And there's a whole conversation to be had about that's phrased.
Absolutely.
Gender-affirming care is actually if you make the opposite of everything, like, self-knowledge, denying, like self-denying damage or something. That's actually a better thing of what it is, because they're denying their true self, and they're damaging themselves permanently and their children. So it's done to children, and it damages the actual truth of who they are. Like, yeah.
Like,
So anyway,
work care.
progressive policies, like expanding that horrible phrase, is, one of the major things that he did was that we talked about it already, right? He put tampons in the boys' bathrooms of the schools. So, but this is also polarizing language. They put that word again in there, polarizing, and I don't know. What do you think?
I think we call him Tampon Tim, and what is it, Waltzing Walz?
Yeah, I like to call him Waltz Away Waltz.
And those are because of his
Waltz Away Tim
progressive
Walz.
policies on gender affirming care and his stolen dollar.
Yeah, exactly. He's earned those nicknames through his actions. It's not like he's just out there saying stuff that he's not doing it. He actually is going to do what he says, and he likes to talk about how socialist he is.
Very much so. We got clips for that.
And speaking of polarizing, let's talk about JD Vance. That's the one that I underlined and read and was like, hey, what is ChatGPT doing right here? And speaking of polarizing, Jonathan, let's talk about JD Vance. Yeah. So, obviously when you put in the prompt and it said, give me a right-leaning script, and it says something like this, man, that is the farthest thing from right-leaning or light-reading.
It's those words that get planted into your subconscious, and you're just thinking a negative connotation.
That's
the way I look at
it's
it.
brainwashing. Now here's a guy who's made a name. Here's a guy who's made a name for himself by not pulling any punches. He burst onto the scene with his book Hillbilly Elegy, but since then his political evolution has been nothing short of dramatic. Once a critic of Trump, he's now one of Trump's most loyal allies in the Senate. His stances are pretty clear: strong on immigration, anti-abortion, and a defender of traditional values. So when they say he made a name for himself by not pulling any punches, what I wrote was, or maybe he made a name for himself by a hard work ethic and self-reliance, because he came up in a very depressed part of Appalachia and put himself through Yale, I believe, right? Yale,
Yes.
he went to.
Okay.
Yep. So he's really pulled himself up by the bootstraps and been an example for people all over the world you're not stuck anywhere. You can actually make something of yourself if you just put in the hard work and, maybe say the right thing at the same time. At the right time, he does have some questionable, stances from earlier on in his career, but it is the world of politics. So I'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt of saying, maybe he's trying to get into the right position before he can actually espouse the correct view, or he's got to say something publicly to kind of get in the door somewhere so that he can make a difference. There's a lot of gray area. The world of politics is a dirty business.
Right. Well, it kind of seems to me too, JD Vance, he's doing the opposite of what we were talking about earlier with Walz, as in, JD Vance is not a guy that's playing both sides of the fence to kind of appeal to both sides. He has what he feels is right, what he thinks is right, where his values lead him.
Well, but he's also
And he
changed.
takes a stance on such things.
I think the thing that I admire about conservatives in general in this particular political era is that they're able to actually change their point of view, listen to a topic, have a conversation, and then maybe adjust, maybe add to their point of view, maybe change it completely. And that, to me, sense of adaptability. Actually, adaptability is one of the 5 core values I wrote last night with Brandy. That was our core values that's going to take us to success. And adaptability is very important because you have to be able to be open and see different perspectives. And I think it represents a state of sovereignty, that you actually can self-govern, because you can actually self-modulate and adjust and see where you're making mistakes, see where you're potentially making mistakes, investigate and adjust and be adaptable. Whereas on the other side of the political spectrum, it's hard to find people who are who have that type of adaptability in their points of view. The left side of the spectrum tends to be very difficult to dissuade from their particular political point of view. Yeah.
This is where I come in. Vance is certainly a complex character.
Whoa.
Transformation from a never Trump conservative to a full-throated supporter of the MAGA movement has been fascinating to watch, and it's earned him a lot of support from the Republican base. But let's not forget, he also attracted his fair share of criticism. Some see him as an opportunistic, willing to shift his positions for political gain.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
People say that's true.
yeah, that's true. But there's no, that's not fucking true. I'm not going to say that's true. So fuck you, ChatGPT, and fuck you, OpenAI.
The artificial intelligent LJ says that's true.
The way, the thing that I just said to you about that he's open-minded and able to adapt.
There it is.
There it is right there. And you could say he's open-minded and able to adapt and investigate the way that he's thinking. So he's a critical thinker, right? Or you could say he's opportunistic and willing to shift his positions for political gain, which I will concede that I did just say that, right? I said that earlier. I was like, well, maybe he's moving and maneuvering, but that's a possibility too. Now, which one do you want to focus on and which one is right-leaning? I kind of wonder what the left-leaning script said, because if this is the right-leaning one and it's telling you that he's opportunistic and willing to shift his positions for political gain, ChatGPT's out there trying to produce useful idiots. It ain't going to work. So that's true, but there's no denying he's tapped into the populist sentiment that's driving a lot of today's politics. Vance has been particularly vocal about economic issues. He's a big supporter of tariffs and other measures designed to protect American workers from global competition, and he's tough on China, advocating for policies that would decouple the U.S. economy from Chinese influence. And I think some of those are good things, and I think the entirety of this script is not all garbage. I mean, there's some good points that they made in here.
Right.
But the word populist is an important one to zone in on, because populism is a concept that is being brandied about as a weapon.
So we're kind of seeing these implants of these words.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of changing the whole perspective of it.
Yeah.
PSYOP.
It's
Psyopish.
and
Psyopish.
it has elements of a psyop, and it could just be sort of like inadvertent, but it could also just be because the program is going to reflect the leaning of the programmer. So it's probably just reflecting the leaning of the program. I don't know that it's necessarily an intentional psyop, but it could be an opportunistic psyop, which is what a lot of George Floyd was, like an opportunistic psyop. Probably Breonna Taylor, all of them. Those are all just jumping on the opportunity and saying, "Hey, let's go ahead and drive up this negative sentiment towards the police and the authorities." Right. So populism is what you could, if you read Plato, it would be like the dark side of democracy. Right. Democracy is a system that Plato in his Republic says it doesn't work, because when you look at the standard bell curve of intelligence, you have like 51% of the population are either average or below average. And so if you have 51% of the population that vote, then you're going to make dumb decisions, right? So you need to have a filter for that. And the filter that he created was a sort of a representational system called a republic, right? So you would have a republic, which would be people who are chosen by the masses through a democratic instrument of voting. But then those people are they're a more intelligent sector of the population that would be more informed and more capable of making the intelligent decisions.
Right.
This is not to talk down on anyone on any side of the level of intelligence that they have or anything like that. It's just, we're just looking at it like objectively, scientifically, like how is that going to work? So when Plato looks at it, populism is the dark side of democracy. It's like the popular vote. It's just whoever, any person who doesn't know anything about politics, well, let's just see what they want. Well, they don't even know anything about politics, so why are you going to ask them what they want, right? So what populism does is it creates the mob rule, or the rule of the masses. And so when they say, there's no denying that he, speaking about J.D. Vance, is tapped into the populist sentiment that's driving a lot of today's politics. Vance is not a populist. It's actually Walz that's more of a populist. And the left actually uses populist tactics to be able to, move their own agendas forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, but I mean, being vocal about economic issues, awesome, because there's economic issues, so we need to talk about them. Big supporter of tariffs and other measures that are designed to protect American workers from global competition. That's fantastic. Why would anybody not want that? Why would you not want to protect American workers? Unless you're not American or you hate America. If you hate America, then you want to destroy it. Then that makes sense. Yeah, he's tough on China. I mean,
we need to be.
That's a whole. I mean, that's a conversation we had too. We could be working with China and probably growing side by side with them and actually benefit a lot from that. But we also have to be careful of them because they are sort of like an enemy as well. So we have to just ride that line, but focus on productive, proactive.
His economic nationalism resonates with a lot of voters who feel left behind by globalization. But LJ, what do you make of his social views? Vance has taken some pretty hardline stances. He's against abortion, even in case of rape or incest, and he's pushed for restricting LGBTQ plus rights. That's going to be a tough sell in some parts of the country. Yeah,
can you give some recent proof of that particular claim? That he's against abortion in cases of rape or incest, and that he's pushed for restricting LGBTQAI plus pedo rights, the pedophile rights. Is he restricting those? How is he restricting those? How is he pushing for restricting those? And I mean, the whole conversation we had earlier about rights, those are privileges that they've got. They have more rights than anyone else. They actually have more rights than anyone else.
Who does?
The LGBTQ.
Yeah.
So they're a protected class. They're very similar to in Maoist China, the way that the communists protected. I forget the name, the Chinese name, but they're the selected class of people who were the useful idiots that were supposed to take over the communist and enact the communist revolution. The Red Guard, basically, they had more privileges than anyone else, and they were a protected class.
Yeah.
They would be able to attack other people, but you weren't allowed to attack them. And that's where the LGBT, that's where those Rainbow Coalition weirdos really are. They're weird. They're weirdos, and you're not allowed to call them that. But yet, every single one of them is going to go and call everyone else weird.
Yeah,
and they're allowed to throw water bottles at police. But then if a conservative throws a milkshake or a water bottle at a police officer, yeah, straight to jail. It's like the was that on Portlandia or something? Straight to jail, directly to jail.
This kind of behavior is never tolerated in Boracua. You shout like that, they put you in jail right away. No trial, no nothing. Journalists, we have a special jail for journalists. You're driving too fast, jail. Slow, jail. You're charging too high prices for sweaters, glasses. You right to jail.
All right, so
No, but what was I going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough sell in some parts of the country. Can you give recent proof of that claim? Like, and then bringing up, oh yeah, his economic nationalism. This is word choice again. Yeah, his economic nationalism resonates with a lot of voters. Nationalism is a word that's easily associated with what's their favorite word? The Nazi Party, right? So they use that word when they want to draw up those sort of nationalistic fervor, and so that word choice in particular is pushing people towards a negative view of a right-leaning person. Yeah. Polarizing. Polarizing shit.
There's that word.
Sure is, but that's part of his appeal to the base. Vance isn't trying to be all things to all people. He's betting that by doubling down on conservative values, he can energize the Republican voters who are tired of what they see as a drift towards the left. That said, his views on social issues could alienate moderates and independents, which might be a problem in a general election. I think actually rereading that for the second time, they're actually preempting what they're probably going to do, which is they're probably going to interfere in the election and push it in their favor, and they're probably going to win. But that's a different.
That's a very good possibility.
It's not a black pill. I'm just saying that's probably what's going to happen.
I saw a post on X talking about Pennsylvania, that they're already saying they're not going to know results from the election.
Right. They're preempting it.
Yeah.
They're preempting and preparing. It's called OPE. It's operational preparation of the environment. Operational preparation of the battlefield. They're putting the thought preemptively into people's heads that it's going to be okay if you see late election results in Pennsylvania, or if these issues and drifting towards LGBTQ, right, anti-LGBTQ stuff could alienate moderates and independents. So they're going to use that. He did this. It alienated moderates and independents, and that's what pushed the election in the direction. Right. So they're using that to preempt. Right there,
yeah.
In my opinion.
Well, yeah, and plus it's Pennsylvania.
Allegedly,
Pennsylvania is a very important swing state.
Yeah, Pennsylvania is a very important swing state.
A lot of people are saying that's what's going to decide it.
And it could be, and it was one of the states that had a lot of election interference and a lot of sort of ballot, skullduggery going on in the last election in 2020. So it may happen again. I wouldn't be surprised. So, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I have more stuff in there, but let's just keep going because this is obviously ridiculous.
So we've got Walz, the progressive leader who's made some bold moves on social issues, and Vance, the conservative firebrand who's unafraid to take a hard stance. So what's the bottom line here, LJ? Who's got the edge?
Yeah. Who's got the edge is an appeal to ego. Is this about winning, or is this doing about what's best
for
people?
Policy or emotion?
Is it about policy or emotion? Exactly. So what they're
policy
saying is who's got the edge?
Or populism?
Is the edge, like, are we going to win the election? Is this an emotional thing, or is this who's got the best policy?
Right.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely focused on emotion. And then something else that you'll notice too, the verbiage here where it says, so we've got Walz, the progressive leader. In the first page, it says Walz is a progressive governor. And then Vance is a conservative firebrand. Here it says he's a progressive leader, and he's a conservative firebrand for Vance. So progressive governor first, progressive leader second. So they're actually leading you down the path to choose him as a leader, a governor, right? He's actually, that's where that word choice is going to subconsciously lead you. Whereas a conservative firebrand is naturally perceived by the brain as a threat, right?
Right.
Oh, that's a threat. That's a
hot
firebrand. Yeah.
Danger.
A dangerous person. So it really depends on what you're looking for.
I think this basically sums it up right here.
This thing
what
here.
you're about to say, yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for. If you want a VP who's going to push a progressive agenda, Walz is your guy. But if you're looking for someone who's going to fight for traditional values and put America first on the global stage, Vance is a clear choice. Both have their pros and cons, and they both bring something very different to the table. And yeah, that's where I was like, yeah, that's true. But what does that mean, right? If you want a VP who's going to push a progressive agenda, Walz is your guy. And that is true. But what does that mean? What is the final result of a progressive agenda, of this particular progressive agenda? I don't actually have any problem with investing, and neither do conservatives, obviously, from what we've talked about already. Investigating, thinking critically, asking questions about things and changing our perspective on things. That's progressive, right? But what I do have a problem with is this particular form of progressivism, which is actually I think it's just changing. It's a Trojan horse for communism.
Yeah, well, it's just changing America as we know it. Right. That was basically the progression part about it. And then when you see these changes coming about, they're kind of like, they kind of just look you in the face, like LGBTQ, right?
Yeah.
We'll definitely have a progressional stance on that today.
Yeah.
The open borders is one.
That's a tough one, yeah.
Right? That's not the way, America has become what it is today.
No.
But then again, if you're one for borders, that's when you're considered racist. And that's not racist at all.
It's not. No, we're a nation of immigrants, but we've always had filters.
You need
and we've had vetting. And
exactly.
I think in the next little segment here, we're talking about like Trump improved the vetting process when he was in office for immigrants that were coming into the country.
Yeah, because I don't think Trump's against immigration.
He's definitely not.
He's against unvetted immigration.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So obviously, he's not against immigration. He's just against the unvetted and illegal free-for-all of letting anyone into the country.
Illegal immigrant, which is another progressive
reports of like terrorist contingents coming into the country and being here now. That over the last 4 years, right. There's multiple,
so many, and that's another progressive move right there with illegal immigrants. I think it's Mayor Orcas who's trying to change it or progress it to where we call them undocumented citizens
But that's
versus illegal immigrants.
Yeah, but that's another contradiction in terms. Like, that's literally an oxymoron. An undocumented citizen is not an undocumented person is not a citizen.
Right.
So calling a person a non-citizen citizen is some newspeak gobbledygook.
Calling it's a citizen, just not documented. Which, in all actuality,
can we define
an
citizen?
illegal
What's a
immigrant kind of states exactly what it is a little more so.
Right, but what's a citizen? What's a citizen?
A citizen is a member.
A documented member of the society, right?
Right.
So what's an undocumented member of society? It's not a fucking citizen. It's the opposite of that.
There's an opposite thing.
It's an uncitizen,
Right,
it's the opposite of a citizen. An undocumented person is not a citizen.
Right.
What they are actually is criminal
It's illegal.
aliens.
Yeah, they've broken the law.
They're not illegal.
They've broken the law.
But they've broken the law, so they're
Right.
criminals. So they're criminals, and they're alien, meaning that they're from a different land, and they're criminals from a different land. They're criminal aliens. That's just all they are. They're not immigrants. They're aliens. They're extra. They call them in Spanish extranjeros. So that means that they're outside of the genera, the people.
That's why this race is so interesting. It's not just about the candidates themselves, it's about the future direction of the country. We're looking at two very different visions for America, and the choice voters make in November is going to have a huge impact on where we go from here.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Jonathan. This is one of those elections where every vote really does matter. And whether you're leaning towards Walz or Vance, it's important to know the facts and make an informed decision. This is definitely not where to look. Don't look on ChatGPT for information, because there's no information in either one of those two statements are so empty and devoid of any information whatsoever.
And we don't know if the facts are the facts.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough part right there for sure. I mean, it doesn't say that here. It says exactly, speaking of facts, we've got some great resources. And it literally says, I mean, this is your line here. I'm going to steal your line, but like,
That's right.
we've got some great resources for our listeners who want to dig deeper into these candidates. We've pulled articles from neutral outlets that give a balanced view of both Walz and Vance. They're setting you up. Don't buy into it. What'd they give us? A deep dive into Bridge, Michigan, and Ballotpedia, and RealClearPolitics, and the American Conservative. I want to look at the American Conservative and see who owns that publication and what kind of stuff they write, because it's probably, and I've never looked at it, I'm just making a pure assumption here, so, allegedly, probably, I would say very, very possibly, that the name of that tells me that it's probably actually a liberal publication that's calling itself the American Conservative, because that's how they operate. That's how they operate. They always lie. Marxists always lie.
It's true. There's lots of lies out there.
I don't endorse any of the
Lying.
Are we going to put the links in this description? I guess we could.
Yeah, so that people can check them out
We can put the
themselves.
links in the description to Bridge, Michigan, Ballotpedia, RealClearPolitics, and the American Conservative. It says they provide thoughtful critiques and support from a right-leaning perspective. I don't think that that's true. This is Ballotpedia just has Tim Walz's profile on it. JD Vance political analysis. So that's like a profile from RealClearPolitics and the American Conservative. But what I'm probably going to do is find out who owns those particular media organizations. Or what their network they're a part of, so that we can kind of look at where they're coming from and who's follow the money, find out who's behind that.
Follow the money.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Catch y'all next time.
Later.
Or something like that, right? I do like it when it says like, that's all we've got for today's episode of the Burnt Biscuit Gang Podcast. Until next time, keep those biscuits buttered and the conversation burning hot. I like that. Keep them biscuits buttered, baby. We're going to be back on some biscuits. That's I don't know, because the you have to be able to filter that stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't have the ability to filter any of that stuff yourself, then you are not a sovereign human being. That means that you are ruled in tyranny by another mind. So we don't want that. I don't want that. Do you want that?
No, I do not want that.
All right. So Jonathan and I have determined that he and I don't want that. If anyone else out there doesn't want that, go ahead and give us a thumbs up in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel, and join us again for another Burnt Biscuit podcast.
If you do like that,
if you do like that,
send a message.
if you do
Let's
like
talk about it.
to be dominated in tyranny and do not like your own personal sovereignty, then also do the same thing. Send us a message. Actually, do whatever you want.
Just don't vote.
If you like to be told what to do and you don't like to do whatever you want, do whatever you want. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow.
Do whatever you like, I guess.
Be free.
Now,
Be free.
now I'm really confused. What if they don't like to be free?
You and your Darvo. Gibberish. You and your Darvo gobbledygook.
It's a bunch of Darbo gobbledygook, I'll tell you what, that's for sure.
That's the ultimate form of Darvo,
It is.
is Darvo gobbledygook.
Yeah.
That's how you completely confuse a person.
I don't know what you're talking about anymore.
Darvo gobbledygook, bro.
I'm totally lost, bro. I don't even know what gobbledygook means. Now, I'm going to dive into this book during this next week. I did one little piece on the Don't Hold Your Breath podcast and I went up to the two-stage communist revolution and how the Great Reset works. But it's an interesting book about fifth generation warfare, what that is, how it works, and how to combat against it. It has little homework segments in it too. I did put a link on the description of that video. It's an Amazon page for this. I can add one to the link in our description for this conversation as well, because it's a very, very important book. This is written by Lieutenant General Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
Okay, so he understands what's going on in this situation, and it's an information war.
He's been around it a lot.
It's a war for your mind. Do you remember the Matrix?
Yeah.
I don't know if it was. I don't think it was that episode, but I put another reference in there when Morpheus is giving Neo the blue pill and the red pill for the first time, and he says, when if you take the red pill, you're gonna go down the rabbit hole and see the truth. And he's like, what truth? He's like, that you are a slave, Neo. You were born into a prison that you can't see and you can't taste and you can't smell and you can't touch. It's a prison for your mind. And so that movie was so prescient to me. Like, I think that, like, meaning that it determines the future, right? It's like a prophecy of a movie. It was a very forward-looking, progressive movie for the time, because they really understood that we're in once the internet was invented and switched on to the people, once they switched the internet onto the people, everybody's on the battlefield. Everyone is on the chessboard. You're on the chessboard, and you can either be a pawn or you can be a player. And if you can get outside of fifth generation warfare, you can be a player. If you're inside the fifth generation warfare, you might be a pawn, you might be a bishop, you might be a king, you might be a rook. You don't know, because you're being manipulated by a player, right? And so it's up to you to find the truth. The truth is out there. Get it. We're here to help you point to it.
We'll shed some light on it.
We're going to shed some light on it so you can see what's going on, so you don't like stub your toe in the darkness stumbling around looking for it. So,
because that sucks. Who wants to stub their toe?
Nobody wants that shit, bro. So yeah, that's all I got for today. What else you got for today?
That's about it.
I think that's pretty much where we're at.
Well, vote, everybody.
Go out and vote. Everybody go out and vote. Everybody deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Always do that. Operate that way 100% of the time, and your life will be beautiful and harmonious. I don't promise you that. And I'm not giving financial advice at all.
Don't listen to this guy.
Don't listen to me whatsoever, please. Yeah, that's it.
That was great.
Good shit. Further over to the left, and now you think it's center. They'll put it in a movie. They'll put it in TV shows. They put it in stuff that people ingest, mindlessly thinking that they're avoiding politics, but they're not avoiding politics. You can't avoid politics.
Dogs on the street, guy can spin wisdom, feel the motivational heat. Biscuits burn, crispy smoke, cloud my defeat. Front porch swinging, trying to catch a cool breeze, sweet.